Hello everyone, back tuning in to the verification for the autumn 2016 forecast. So back at the end of the summer, back at the end of August, we released the autumn forecast and we predicted a milder and drier than average autumn with a lot of high pressure influences. We predicted westerly winds, but we thought high pressure would be close to the country and deliver us quite a dry autumn. And overall, we predicted temperatures to be around 1.5 degrees above average, so pretty significantly milder than average. And we also said all three autumn months were likely to be on the milder side. We'll see how the forecast panned out in a moment. We'll have a look at the averages for the autumn from the UK Met Office. I'll get on with that for you in a second. Before we go on with that, just quickly say about the ads, link articles, pages, have a browse, visits, click through links. If there's any articles that you're interested in, you're going to be having to pay for the website. Thanks very much for doing that. So this is the mean temperature anomaly for the autumn of 2016 from the UK Met Office. This is set against the 61 to 1990 average. So I always have to explain with these verifications that we do and the long-range forecast. We've sort of got the two temperature anomalies running alongside each other. Officially, we're still using 61 to 1990, which is a very old temperature average now and encompasses the really cold decade of the 1960s. And then also we've got 81 to 2010, which is a more modern temperature average, and I would assume is the average we should really be using now all the time. But we've got 81 to 2010 as well as 61 to 1990, so we always have to compare our forecast against the two data sets really. So this is 61 to 90. This is set against 61 to 1990, the temperature anomaly for the autumn. And you see that generally it was warmer than average autumn, temperatures coming out above average, set against 61 to 1990. Scotland was closer to average, and eastern parts of England had the greatest deviation, where we was around 1 to 1.5 degrees above average. But generally temperatures were around a degree or so on the milder side of average, away from Scotland where it was closer to normal. Now, if we set this against 81 to 2010, we can see that it was much closer to average. The reason for that, of course, is that 81 to 2010 is a warmer temperature average. It encompasses all of the warm years that we had in the 1990s and the 2000s as well. So it's a more relevant temperature average, really. And set against that one, we see that the temperature anomaly comes out very close to average. Eastern parts of the country, again, still just a little bit above average, around half a degree or so above average. But for the rest of us, actually, those temperatures are very close to average that we had during this autumn. However, this sort of average to above average temperature anomaly for this autumn does mask a very interesting and quite unusual autumn that has occurred. So I'm going to run you through the temperature anomalies on a month-by-month basis. This is how September panned out, set against 61 to 1990. It was a very warm month. Look at that. Temperature anomaly set against 61 to 1990, the old and cold temperature average. Around 2.5 degrees above average, or up to 3 degrees above average across many parts of the country, particularly eastern, southern areas. But even in the north and west, it was very significantly warmer than average as well. So it's job to remember it now, but back in September, especially the first half of September, it really was very, very warm indeed, with hot temperatures going on well into September. Now, set against 81 to 2010, the temperature anomaly for September wasn't as extreme, but even so, still over a degree above average, really, for most parts of the country, around a degree, degree and a half. And against 81 to 2010, across the southeast, it was still around 2.5 to 3 degrees above average. So, obviously, a very warm September. However, October shows a dramatic cool down. So, in October, we lose all of those dark red colours and we go much closer to average. This is the temperature anomaly for October, set against 61 to 1990. And yes, those temperatures then are very close to average. Still a little bit above average in the east, but otherwise close to average set against 61 to 1990. It's the same story set against 81 to 2010. So obviously from September to October we had a big drop in temperature, and October comes out around average. And then even more interestingly, we go through to November, and actually we get a colder than average month for many parts of the country. So set against 61 to 1990, we see that Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, Wales, down in towards the Midlands, coming out colder than average. And elsewhere in the south and southeast, it is closer to normal. But again, clearly, there's a big cool down going on here from where we start to where we finish. Now, of course, it's a cooling time of year, so you'll expect a cool down, but these are set against averages. So, set against average, there's a big cool down taking place. And set against 81 to 2010, actually November 2016 comes out with an even bigger deviation. So that's a proper cold and below average month, really, for most parts of the country. Scotland, Northern England having temperature anomalies around 1.5 degrees below average, so really cold in the north. Elsewhere, it's not as big a deviation, but still around a degree colder than average, set against 81 to 2010. We didn't pick this up in the autumn forecast. We predicted that all three autumn months would be above average. We didn't pick up this idea that has occurred, that we will get a dramatic cool down, especially by the time we got through to November. Cold and average Novembers have been very, very rare over the past 20-25 years. So quite a dramatic occurrence has actually happened this autumn, and particularly when you think how warm it was in September when we started. In terms of rainfall for this autumn, so the north and west, set against 61 to 1990, coming out with a significantly drier than average autumn, especially so for Scotland, Northern Ireland, but also for Wales, North West England and South West England too. In fact, the bulk of the country comes out with a drier than average autumn. It's really just on the east coast where it's a little bit wetter. And the reason for that, quite interesting, is that in October we had lots of easterly winds, very easterly driven October, and that brought showers onto the eastern coast. So that's a reason that down the east coast it is a little bit wetter. But the bulk of the country has had a drier than average autumn, and that's even more the case against 81 to 2010. We find virtual places, except right along the coastal fringe there of the east coast, virtual places come out average to drier than average. So if you just took the temperature and precipitation averages together for the autumn, it wouldn't be a bad autumn forecast. We've come out drier than average, we've come out milder than average. So that works out okay. But when you get into the detail, I mean, I've gone a bit longer than I normally do for these verifications because I thought it's important to examine the detail. When you get into the detail, I'm not sure the autumn forecast has gone that well, because most of that warm temperature anomaly comes from September, with October coming out average and November turning out to be a colder than an average month. We didn't really predict that in the autumn forecast. The drier than average signal is perhaps a little bit better, but we said it'd be anticyclonic, but generally the mean wind flow would be from the west. Actually, we had southerly winds to start off with in September, and then they turned easterly, and finally it finished up quite northerly, I think, in November. So, didn't have a great deal of westerlies. I'm not sure the autumn forecast has gone all that well, despite the overall temperature and precipitation anomalies coming out okay. So I'll leave it for you to judge what you think. As ever, when we issue these long-range forecasts, it's important that we go back at the end of the season and examine what has happened, and that is what's happened. It's up to you to decide what you think about the Gasworthy's autumn forecast. So that closes the door on the autumn. We are now into winter. Of course, we issued winter forecast on the 1st of December. And as ever with that, when we get to the end of the season, early March, we'll verify the winter forecast to see how that one did. And on we go with these long-range forecasts, verifying how they performed at the end of the season. Right, that's all for now. Come back tomorrow for weekend forecast. There'll also be the next Christmas update as well tomorrow. So that's it for now, and thanks for watching.